I'll hand over to you, Dave.
Right. All right. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, it's 3 minutes past 7. So we've had a bit of a discussion whilst we get underway. Welcome, everybody. As I say, I'd like to have seen a few more members. We had quite a few last week. But I don't know if we got any apologies from anybody.
We have apologies from Jim Davis.
Right. Okay.
And possibly John Wright won't make it. John had to go for treatment today, so it depends how he is with that.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Hope all goes well with John then. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure Mark's a very busy man. So once again, can I thank Mark for joining us this evening? Mark Shelford. And that's the next item on the agenda. So I'll go straight into Mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you very much, and also Robin and all of Chard Rotary for letting me join you tonight. I'm going to divide my talk into 4 parts. First, a little bit about my background. Second, about the PCC role and current issues with the police. Third, my priorities for the role. And finally, then to let you have at me and ask me questions. And if I can't answer them, I'll go back to Robin with my answer once I've done the necessary research. First, a little bit about me. I was brought up just outside Bath, the son of a vicar in a very rural parish. I worked on local farms in the holidays, and that's where I learned to swear. I thought it was going to be the army, but no, it was working on the farms. I then joined the army and served all over the globe. And whilst I was a tank soldier, I spent most of my time on my feet, whether working alongside the RUC in Northern Ireland, the Royal Malay Police chasing communist terrorists in the jungles of Borneo, or more recently working with the incredibly brave but very badly trained and equipped Afghan National Police. To tell you a little anecdote from Borneo that helps explain my love of police. I was out on patrol in the jungle and we would generally make camp, but on a few occasions we would stay in longhouses with the local tribe. And we'd be in the jungle for about a week, and after about a week you stop smelling yourself, you'll be pleased to know. And one of the Royal Malay police officers came up to me and asked if we could stay in his tribe longhouse that night, and I agreed. And we duly arrived about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, still a couple of hours of light left. And I thought we'd been really stealthy as we crept through the jungle. But clearly the jungle drums had actually been literally beating because it was before mobile phones. And the longhouse was decked in bunting, and there was a feast that had been prepared. And I was given pride and place next to the chief, who spoke no English and I spoke no Avon. So we communicated via an interpreter and a bit of sign language. And the feast commenced, and Lord only knows what we were eating, and I didn't dare ask. But foolishly, I made the mistake of asking how the drink chuak was made. Do any of you know how chuak is made? Well, it's made by the women of the tribe chewing on dried rice and then spitting the remains of the chew into a big pot with a lid. And when enough liquid has been created, the pot is then sealed, and a few weeks later, it's ready to drink. Well, it was quite powerful, I can tell you. Towards the end of dinner, speeches were made, and to my horror, I was offered the chief's daughter for the night. Now, I was a pretty young 24-year-old captain, but I knew whatever I did was going to cause offense to somebody. It was going to be a complete disaster. But as you know, the good Lord works in mysterious ways, and a lightning bolt of inspiration whizzed into my head, and I sent for my sergeant and said to him, make sure you get us up well early in the morning. while it's still dark, and we'll slip away into the jungle before everybody gets up. And he nodded and said, yes, sir. And I then proceeded to drink copious quantities of tuac until I was completely incapable of doing absolutely anything, and quietly snored away in the corner of the longhouse floor. It took me a few days to recover from that, I can tell you. My head was bloody sore in the jungle thereafter, but diplomacy was served. So I can accurately say that I have shoveled shit with the best of them in both civilian life and military uniform. Perhaps it's better for me to say that my experience in the military as a local politician has taught me to listen, to be curious, and to never trust someone who says there's only one way of doing things. I believe there lies the true path to disaster. So the PCC, who knows what the role of the PCC is? Because not many people do. I think importantly, it can be summed up as giving strategic direction whilst the Chief Constable maintains independent operational control. Consequently, the role has three parts: to be a single democratic focus for local policing, and it replaces the old police authority, which under its own admission was pretty opaque. And it is there chiefly to write the annual police and crime plan, accurately representing the people of Avon and Somerset, and also at the same time to write the supporting budget. And the final role is to hire, scrutinise, and where necessary, fire the Chief Constable. And all of you will get a chance to vote in the next PCC election, which is going to be the 6th of May 21. And I please ask all of you to vote. Clearly, I'd like you to vote for me, but it's important, it's a democratic process, and it really is important that we try and get people to vote for the PCC because it's a crucial role. Now, turning to the police performance in Avon and Somerset, I genuinely think the frontline police officers that I have met are excellent and extremely courageous. They truly do run to danger to keep us safe. However, the feedback I'm getting from the public is that Avon and Somerset has not had a good year this year, largely caused by some poor leadership decisions. And I can cite many examples of demonstrations, statues, raves, and some very poor discipline. But actually, I don't blame the frontline police at all. I don't think it's their fault. And unlike the military that are trained in leadership and management at every level of command, the police are not. Amazingly, they are only allocated one training day every 6 weeks. And that hardly allows them time to deal with skill fade, let alone take on new pieces of equipment, for example, tasers or blue light training. I did a ride along before COVID with Avon response force, and they had 6 cars in their response force, 12 police officers, of which only 2 were blue light trained. And of those 2, one of them was going on maternity leave. That is extraordinary levels of undertraining for a really important operational role. And whilst not as bad elsewhere, it's still not good just on blue light training. If you take somewhere like Trinity Police Station, the centre of Bristol, which is the busiest police station in the whole of Avon and Somerset, and they have similar levels of capability, and it is quite frightening, I think. It's something I feel very, very strongly about, and if I am elected, I'm going to do all I can to improve the leadership education and management training within the force. Now, to take an example, I looked up the latest statistics of crime in Chard, and these are 2 months behind the current month. So these are September levels, and you had 98 street level crime incidents reported to the police. The largest category was violent crime, followed by antisocial behaviour, shoplifting and drugs. And specific areas, and please excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, but there were 20 crimes in Dwelly Close area, 15 in Coombe Street, which I believe is adjacent to the High Street, 16 in Tesco Park and Henson Park area, and 7 in Jocelyn Park and Fernham Road areas. Now there are other areas where there was crime, but those are the hotspots within Chard. And again, a question for you to think about: how much do the local police actually engage with the residents in Chard to prevent business crime, shoplifting, and rural crime, as well as then investigating once those crimes have happened? And I was on the high street of Chard a couple of times recently, and I asked a number of the shopkeepers about shoplifting specifically. And the vast majority of shoplifting happens when the children come out of school, because that gives cover to other miscreants, particularly those people who are perhaps homeless, who are stealing to feed their habits, because they go in when the children are in. And I asked how many police had been seen on patrol at that time of 3:30, between 3 o'clock and 4. And most shopkeepers said very rarely. And when you ask the police, it's because that time is a changeover between shifts. Now, that is one of the issues that's an operational issue, but it's also a strategic issue, that if the shift pattern doesn't work with the crime pattern, we need to shift the shift pattern. And it only has to be shifted a bit, but it has to be flexible rather than inflexible. Now, I've done a fair amount of research and spoken to a lot of residents all over the 16 constituencies that make up Avon and Somerset. And my plan basically has 3 priorities of action. First is to reassure the public that the police are there for them, will engage and will investigate. Second, to refocus the police on fighting crime away from being this catch-all from society's ills. Now, it's very easy to say that, but actually a lot of the catch-all are statutory functions that we need to change, and we need other agencies in government to change to support them. For example, the police deal with an awful lot of mental health issues, and there is no quick reaction force from the NHS to deal with mental health problems. And that causes problems, particularly after hours and at night time during the weekends. And we need to put our arms around that and see what we can do to make that better. The final thing is to rebuild the morale of the police, because the frontline police have taken a hell of a hammering this year, and they need better equipment, better training, and as I've said before, leadership education and management training, and really to feel that they are supported, but by a critical friend. So I'm now going to try, assuming I can work the technology, to show you a short video that I took during one of my visits to Chard earlier in this year. And then when I finish that, I'm really happy to take questions. So please bear with me and see if I can make the system work. And if I can't, we'll just go straight into questions. Ooh, yeah, here we go. Right, let's try. My name is Mark Shelford, and I'm standing to be your next Police and Crime Commissioner of Avon and Somerset. I spent a terrific day in and around Chard, speaking to both residents and businesses about the concerns of police and crime. Three issues keep coming back to the top of the pile. First of all, county lines. Second, antisocial behaviour. And third, dangerous driving. The Police and Crime Commissioner has three important roles. The first is to be a single point of contact for the residents in developing the annual police and crime plan, their priorities in policing. Second, to make sure proper scrutiny happens with the Chief Constable in developing that plan and delivering it, having the power both to hire and to dismiss the Chief Constable. And finally, raising the funds in order to deliver the police and crime plan in the area. If I'm chosen as the next Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, I'll make sure that the 403 extra officers allocated under the Prime Minister's 20,000 will be targeted at frontline facing jobs, specifically country towns and rural areas. Vote for me, Mark Shelford, as your next Police and Crime Commissioner, and make Avon and Somerset safer. Right, enough of that publicity. Now really happy to take any questions that you might have.
Right.
Are there any questions for Mark?
Yeah, I can do one.
Yes, David.
Yeah.
Do the Chard force get asked to go and help in other places? In other words, do they get taken away from their normal duties very much?
Well, I am guessing, because I haven't asked the question, that based on other police centres, if they have both a neighbourhood and a response team, then a request for mutual support comes out because of, let's say, a rave happening, and then they will suck officers out of all the areas to support that big event, whatever that might be. So specifically in Chard, I don't know because I haven't spoken to the inspector there to talk about that, but I would imagine so, yeah.
Thank you.
Dave Bulmer.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Mark, for that presentation. Yeah, the training aspect. Surely there's a specific budget for training. Could you actually highlight is the budget the actual issue, or is it other problems within the actual approach that the police are actually taking regarding training? Because training, changes all the time. My second question is obviously Chard is quite different, is more rural to the the bigger areas such as Bristol and Bath, and often it's often said that the resources are primarily put into those bigger areas because obviously crime is quite significant in those areas. I just wondered how you would address that.
Thank you very much, Dave, for both those questions. I think the first thing is it's a philosophy about training, that training is important. Interestingly, the current PCC never talks about training, talks about kit, talks about police numbers, doesn't talk about morale, and it is something. There's the budget for this coming year is 328 million. So there's going to be some money in there for training, absolutely. It's not so much that, it's about making the structure cope with training so that more days are allocated to groups to do training, like taser training. And also looking at the training, taser training came in as a 2-week package. That takes somebody off the street for 2 weeks. hell of a burden. And could it be shortened into a 4-day package, reducing it and still being as effective, etc. And getting that balance and having somebody who really understands training. I pretend to understand it quite well because I ran a training company, and making sure that the right training gets out to the people. So that's the first question. I don't think it's a money issue, it's a philosophy issue. The second question is about getting the balance right between the rural and the city level of resources. Right now, upwards of 70% of the resources are pushed into the cities, and 30% around the rest, which is just not enough. The rural crime team is about 4 in it. And crime has changed hugely. There's an awful lot of internet crime. There's a lot of fraud. I mean, an enormous amount of fraud that goes on. And the anti-fraud team within Avon Somerset is tiny, and they really only engage in crimes sort of 6 million and above. Well, a lot of the internet crime is tiny. It hurts the person who's lost 100 quid really significantly. And some of those people, that's an awful lot of money. But the resources aren't there to then chase it down, and they get pushed to central resources, action fraud, etc. So coming back to your question, I think there's a requirement for a better balance of town to rural, but also across the other crime types. There is no drug squad. Sue Stevens got rid of it when she took over. And I think drugs are one of the biggest crimes that we face, and county lines. And I really, really want to remake a drug squad. Her argument, to be fair to her, says that every police officer should be a drug squad person. But I know that's not right, because it's about intelligence and focus, and you need that as a squad. So short answer is a better balance.
Bob Jackson had his hand up, me.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark, it's quite a game every time you drive past Chard police station to count the number of vehicles that are parked up in there.
Yeah.
If you can get above 6, that's quite normal. I've counted as many as 7 or 8. Now, I realise that a lot of police work is intelligence founded, if you like, so that when we read about drugs raids on a house and you get police come in and help out. So the police in Chard are probably reactive rather than proactive. It does help that if you ring up, you do get a response if it's considered urgent enough. But perhaps there's an awful lot of people sat in a police station, which, as far as I know, is very rarely open, and waiting for the phone to ring rather than going out and looking for it. And not now, but I go back a few years and I walked down the high street and I observed a drugs trade between 2 people. I paused as I came out of the shop and looked at the money and package being passed. And I then saw the third person looking on, who just closed his eyes and nodded his head for me to move. So I went straight around the police station, did find them open. And the guy said, oh, I described the chap. He said, oh, that's so-and-so, I expect. He said, I can't go out now. I'm too busy doing the paperwork. Which is probably, you know, how the frontline police feel with the reports and records they've got to do if they actually just even so much as caution somebody, never mind arrest.
And that is, there are two aspects to that. It's a really, really good point, and one that I've personally experienced. 2 aspects to that. First of all, it's about structures and risks of senior commanders within the police, identifying what is the minimum amount of paperwork in order to be compliant with national legislation. And that's about risk taking. And as you have probably seen over this year, the senior police officers in Avon Somerset are very risk averse, which has resulted in them not doing a number of things that the public have wanted them to do. The second aspect is that it really is that bad with paperwork. I went and did a ride along with Trinity, and we started quite early in the morning. We got a briefing that we were going to do an arrest operation with a senior drug gang leader in Bristol. We went off in a series of vehicles, about 12 of us, surrounded the house, went in, got the bloke. He was actually quite compliant, so there wasn't a bust up and a big fight, but we had all the heavies there. Collected him and then took him to Patchway, which is one of the 3 lockups in Avon and Somerset. He took an hour to be processed with 12 forms, 12 separate paper forms that needed to be completed between the police officers handing him over and the custody sergeant getting him. He was then put in his cell, which is better than some of the barrack rooms I've been in, I can tell you. And then his lawyer had managed to get him straight into the magistrate's court. So we had to reverse the process and fill in those 12 forms again to get him out. So 24 forms, 2 hours of an 8-hour shift, of which 1 hour was probably the briefing and the actual action. So that's 3 hours of an 8-hour shift. We then had to drive him from Patchway to the magistrate's court in Bristol. That took an hour, so that's 4 hours. We then got him into there, and he had to go through another handing over to the custodial equivalent. They were a civilian group, not police group, but they run the custody suite in the magistrate's court. That was another 20 forms of paper. Some of those are online, but some of them are required to be in paper. And that was another hour. So 5 hours out of a shift of 8 hours was taken up. Well, okay, let's be fair. 4 hours was administration and filling in forms. So by the time we got back to the station, there was no time for them to do anything other than catch up with all their emails and all their reports they had to write. So that team of 2, I saw operating, did one operation for the whole day. That is not very effective, and we need to do something about that.
Well, Mark, I mean, if you add to that, I mean, if you take with Chard, I think the nearest custody suite for Chard is Bridgewater.
Yes.
So you've got an hour each ways driving.
Yes.
Before you even get into the custody process.
Yes. I agree, and that's supposed to be resolved by having a paddy wagon. In the old days, you're all too good and you didn't misbehave. But if I'd been misbehaving in Bath as a young tearaway teenager, I'd been nicked and put in a paddy wagon and taken off to the cells. Well, there is a paddy wagon. Avon and Somerset have hired a civilian company to produce a paddy wagon to go round all the centre and collect the miscreants and bring them back to Patchway. Good, you say, efficient, you say, terrific, you say. And then you ask, does it operate after 10 o'clock at night? Does it work on a Saturday and a Sunday? Oh no, because it's too expensive. Really? So we're back to the same old problem that when you need them, they're not available. So we need to look at that. We need to get that balance right. We need to invest differently. Conceptually, I want on the custody suites to do an operational. I want the chief constable to do an operational assessment of the effectiveness against time taken to drive, and whether it's better to spend. They're fearfully expensive. Spend the money on building a new custody suite somewhere in the middle. It gives better access to some of the country towns, or whether to hire the equivalent of big caravan custody suites that can be driven to places and then parked up for the weekend and then when they're moved, for example, if Glastonbury's on, you move them to Glastonbury, or if there's a festival somewhere else, you can move them to wherever they're needed. And whether it be cheaper to buy 3 or 4 of those and have them manned by police officers that can go around and do all the processing. But again, we need to make sure the administration is smoother and more effective, and release the police officers, get off their asses and be out there doing their stuff, and talking to people and gathering intelligence and reassuring the public that they are there for them.
Chris, you've had something?
Yeah, I remember when Taunton and the Oval had custody suites. Wouldn't it be a bit cheaper to just open them up again? The same as the local police stations?
Not my decision to make now, but after elected, that is absolutely one of the things I want to look at. What is the most operational effective mechanism for what is cost effective to get these police officers out and doing their stuff? And I have a completely open mind about it. I'm not hard over on fixed cells in the new build in Yeovil. It would have been better if they had. But, let's look at something different and see what we can come up with. But it's not working as well as it should do at the moment, I don't believe.
Yes. John Harris.
Thank you, Robin. I'd like to ask Mark, of the promised 20,000, do you know how many have been recruited to date? And secondly, how long it takes to train them to get them out on the streets?
6 weeks.
Well, what a good question. So we're supposed to get 403 of them in total by the end of 23. By the time that the Home Office produced their statistics for this year, Avon and Somerset had recruited a total of 12 new ones. Now, we need to understand what that means. What that means is, whilst they have recruited a number of training squads, sort of 60 ago, they had also had a number of people retired or ill or whatever. So the overall uplift so far to the promised 20,403 for Avon and Somerset is 12. Now, if you go in and ask a police officer that, he'll say, no, many more. Well, okay, I'm waiting for the next statistics to come out from the Home Office, and then we'll work on that number. The second part of your question is, how long does it take? Well, what sort of police officer are you? A lot of them are now graduate entry. That's a 3-year course, and it's sponsored by the University of the West of England. There are, and so you will do a sort of, I think it's 10-week to 18-week boot camp, effectively, at Portishead, and then you'll go off to university, and then you'll do day release, and then eventually you'll be allowed to go on your own, etc., etc. You'll be qualified. But it's a 3-year course. There are other courses of direct entry to be investigators, because at the moment we're down at about 33% of the investigators. So what you may recall as CID and Mr. Morse doesn't exist anymore. He's now not a detective, he's an inspector in the investigation branch, and nobody to be in the investigation branch because of cold cases and then being held accountable to it. So it's really difficult to get people to go into it. So they're recruiting direct into it. So you won't do the 2 years on the beat. You'll do the boot camp, and then you'll be trained on day release through West of England into an investigator, and that's where you'll stay. Again, I'm not sure that's the right answer, but I'm open mind to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just thinking about police visibility. Bob mentioned about drug dealing happening openly in the high street. What's happened to the old walking the beat. It may be they don't have sufficient, literally, feet on the ground to do that. And the other advantage of that is the best intelligence you can get is from the old folk looking out their windows and seeing what's happening out on the street. I used to be in the police service, and the best form of intelligence normally came from the home beat officer. I used to work on one of the squads, and the best intelligence we got was from the home beat officer who's been speaking to normal residents in the street. And I think that is a big thing, the police visibility back on the streets and interacting with the public, other than just meeting them when a crime occurs.
Peter, I completely agree with you. And you would expect that I would agree with you, because my intelligence gathering operations in the past have been exactly that, on our feet. Classically, in the streets of Belfast, Duncan Gardens, walking down the patrol, and one of the soldiers in my gang said, why have they got so many milk bottles outside their house? They've never had that before. Why is the milkman delivered? And that single piece of information turned into intelligence, then discovered the house had been taken over. We were able to go in and get the baddies, and everything was fine. But it was because of a bright-eyed soldier on the ground identifying on the ground something unusual. And that's exactly the same for the police. Now,
it is. I mean, you wouldn't see that driving through in a car, and that's my whole point.
I agree. And that's where the PCSOs try to do part of that. But I don't think it's enough. And that's again why I said in my video, the 403 extra officers, I want to push into the rural environment, get them out on the ground as much as possible. Now, I haven't got a magic wand. You know, I can't get bobbies on the beach again everywhere. But today I was pleased to discover locally in Bath, where we have a problem with drugs in one of the parks, the neighbourhood copper driving past me, stopping and talking to me, and he'd been around the area and sitting there watching and waiting, which was good, and he picked up lots of intelligence. So that, you know, we're not going to go back to the old days of lots of people on the feet, but we are trying to get the balance right.
I assume also in the counties it's response time to an individual officer getting himself or herself into trouble. I was in the Met, and the response time was a couple of minutes. I would imagine it's a lot longer than that here in the county. So there may be that aspect of it to think about as well.
Stanley, did you want to say something?
Oh yes. Could you, Mr. Shelford, could you just give us a thumbnail picture of your professional background?
So a professional soldier for 32 years, a cavalry officer driving tanks, although operationally I spent all my time on the ground. My particular specialisms within the military were procurement and training. I left, I retired from the forces about 10 years ago. I set up a training and simulation company based out of Bath, but operating mainly in the Middle East, supporting government agencies in the Middle East, until I was elected really by accident to local government. I became the deputy leader of Bath and North East Somerset, with the cabinet responsibilities for highways, transport, and the environment. Then more recently, I have set up another company operating on the fringes of government, helping business navigate government. So I also have 2 degrees in different stuff, but basic technology is my sort of side.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else got any questions? Yes, Robert. You need to unmute yourself, Robert.
Thank you. Sorry, I hadn't realised. Mark, really, it's just reference to the town, if you like. With reference to what you discovered is happening in Chard, is there sort of pattern of crime here reflective of other towns, or do you think it is reflective of this being a very low-wage area and maybe that causes an increase in crime relative to the population?
I don't, to be perfectly honest, I don't know the answer to your question. I was surprised when I looked at your figures. I thought they were much higher than I was expecting. And certainly anecdotally, when I walked around the town and spoken to businesses and people, there is crime, but I didn't think it was at the rate of September, because that's only the reported crime. An awful lot of crime is not reported. So I was surprised, and I was particularly surprised that so much of it was violent crime. And I wondered if there's a gang that has moved into Chard recently, maybe out of Yeovil, let's say, because it's getting too hot for them in Yeovil. So they come to Chard and they're kicking off in Chard at the moment. But it's a question that you might wish to raise with your MP and then ask them to raise it with the current Police and Crime Commissioner. Equally, I'm very happy to write to the Police and Crime Commissioner, but you'll get more traction from your MP at the moment than you will from me, because I'm the opposition.
Yeah, many thanks. I think the thing that is disturbing was really, as you rightly say, the amount of violent crime in the town, which I think is something that probably needs to be chased off at some time.
Mm. Well, if I was PCC now, I definitely would.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question for Mark?
Just another one, Robin.
Yes, Dave.
The future of Chard Police Station is envisaged that it would be closed anyway, given the geographical location within Somerset of Chard. It's right in one of the corners. I always thought it would have been more practical to keep it open because it's a specific location, because of its specific location. I just wonder what your thoughts were on that.
It's part of the operational effectiveness study that I wish the Chief Constable to do when I take over. Touch wood, I'm elected when I take over, because there are many things like that in the custody suites, which, yes, a lot of these old police stations cost a huge amount to maintain, which is why they want to go to sort of super hubs. But the disadvantage of super hubs are they're not in the locations. And we need the neighbourhood police forces and the response to be better spread across the whole area, to be more effective. And I've seen this in my military life all over the world. In Afghanistan, we did all that sort of shrinking, and then we did the pulling back out again to get out into the areas because you can't influence if you're not there, and if you're not on the ground and you're not interacting. So I'm very sympathetic with your view. Can I promise to keep Chard Station open? No, I can't, and I won't. But what I will promise to do is a proper operational effectiveness study by the police constable as soon as I get in.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's just on the point you made about crime in Chard and think it may be others coming in from outside. And I just wondered if the locals once arrested someone and they've been charged, etc., they actually do an intelligence debrief of the person they've got in custody, because they will know.
I agree. Yeah.
Whether that's usual here in the counties, as I say, but certainly it's something we did in the Met, did an intelligence debrief. The 9 times out of 10, they didn't want to speak to us, but the odd one did, and you can normally get a lot of good information.
Absolutely. But again, that's an operational piece rather than a strategic piece. So, and certainly right now, nobody's going to tell me anything. So, you know, it's one of those frustrations that as a candidate, you're particularly the current PCC won't spread any information to us as candidates at all.
Sorry, any other questions? No, well, I think it just falls on Dave. Would you like to thank Mark?
Yes, yeah. Thank you, Mark, for joining us this evening and you know, giving your presentation and obviously answering a lot of very important questions from our members. Really appreciate that, and wish you good luck for with your campaign. So Paul Arnold's got his hand up now. So
Clapping.
He's clapping. He's clapping.
He's clapping, is he? Okay, right.
Yeah.
So I think it all falls on all of us to give you a bit of a round of applause for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed, and it was my pleasure. And please, if you did enjoy it and think it's worth it, please spread to the other Rotary clubs, because I think you are brilliant what you do, and I'd be delighted to go and talk to them. And if you have a moment, you could go on my website and complete the business crime survey. That would be really great. But thank you all very much for your time today, and enjoy your rest of your meeting.
Mark, I would say you made reference a couple of times to what the current Police and Crime Commissioner has done in her time. We have extended an invitation to Sue Mount-Stevens to join us for one of these meetings. We are waiting to hear back from her, and obviously we will invite any other potential candidates for this position to talk to us in exactly the same way.
Terrific, and that's how it should be.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're welcome to stay with us, Mark. We've got other business to conduct, but if you wish to leave, if you're busy and you wish to leave, then please do.
I hope you don't think I'm rude, but I will go because I've got my dinner waiting.
Right, that's fine.
Cheerio.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. I hope you felt that was worthwhile, gentlemen.
Very.
Yes,
Yes,
very good.
definitely.
As I said, I have sent an invitation to Sue Mount-Stevens to join us, but I'm waiting to hear whether she will or not.
Good.
Do we know how many other candidates there are or not?
Well,
yet?
no, it's an odd thing. Mark is the first one because the Police and Crime Commissioner elections were due to take place in May this year, and they were cancelled because of the COVID situation. As Mark said, it looks as though they will take place in May next year, and that possibly some people who were planning to stand this year things may have changed and they may not be in a position to stand next year. So I will have a look and see if I can find out who the other potential candidates are, and if I can, then I will get in touch with them.
Good.
Good.
Apologies, Mr. President, for arriving late this evening. I forgot what day it was.
Don't we all, Robert?
Mind you, in the last few days, I have accepted an offer on my property, and I had my offer accepted where I want to go.
Oh,
good.
Well done, Robert.
Quite busy.
Well done, Robert.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad you can join us anyway. Right. President's report. Actually, I've got nothing to report this week. There's certain things I said I would do, but I've been busy. And Bob's highlighted one thing I said I'd do, and I must get on with and do that because. Okay. Secretary.
Nothing.
Nothing. Right. Thank you.
Sorry, I was late, but my other computer wouldn't switch on.
Oh right. Oh dear.
Oh, isn't it lovely, these things?
Yeah.
I'm all right.
Bob, Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask if you'd raise your hand? Has anybody managed to buy anything on Amazon Smile? One,
Can I
two,
say,
three,
Bob,
four.
that we buy Amazon via my son, who's got Amazon Prime, and we get free delivery, and he does what you do, but it's for the Great Ormond Street.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't feel inclined to pay postage. So I'm going to stay with Great Ormond Street.
Fine, fine. I've done a couple of purchases, and I mean some of the detail. Amazon will donate 0.5%, so that's 5p in the pound, of the net purchase price, excluding VAT, returns, and shipping fees. And when you get your order confirmed, it says you made a difference because you placed this order at smile.amazon.co.uk. Amazon will make a donation to the Rotary Club of Chard Trust Fund. So it works.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea.
I think a lot of us may have been aware of it through other things like I subscribe to the RNLI, and they always say if you pay, but I've never bothered. But Peter's picking this up, and they've been doing it for 3 years as Amazon, and there's hundreds of Rotary clubs, so it's a worthwhile pickup, Peter. And I've already asked one member of the family today, and I'm going to ask another one shortly. So hopefully it will tickle over. Pity it wasn't a couple of months earlier when we were buying with a bit more regularity, but it will mount up, and it's money for nothing. It costs you nothing, and you pay the same prices.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Bob, for setting it up. Yeah, it's why not? It doesn't. Every penny we get is a penny we didn't have before, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've made a couple of purchases through the Smile. I was donating to the Royal British Legion as my charity, but I've changed that now to ours.
Yeah.
So,
and you can ask people, because Barbara was speaking to her niece, and they do all their stuff online because of illness, etc. So I had a word with her, and I said, do you do anything charity wise? And she said no. Oh, Barbara picked up. So she's going to do it. So if you get the right person, the right moment, it will branch out. It could be nice. Especially explain that we do lots of different charities. Biggest one in the last 12 months, I suppose, locally is the Lord's Larder. Everybody's aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah. As I've said, I've also made a couple of purchases. On Smile as well. So on Amazon Smile. Right. Okay. Round up from members. Paul, you got anything?
No, nothing at all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. John Harris?
No, nothing, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, have you got anything else? Anything?
No, thank you.
All right. Chris?
Yeah, just one thing.
Yep.
I had an email from one member, and I can't remember who it was. Nobody on the screen at the moment, about Christmas cards.
Oh.
Did everybody get it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a damn good idea.
Yeah.
Well,
donate to the club rather than send loads and loads of Christmas cards.
Yeah.
We have this every year.
Yeah.
And I think we all make the same response. Those that like to not send a card and make a donation, fine. Those that want to send cards, fine.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have a Christmas card collection.
No.
We've tried it before in one or two different ways. Individual thing. If you want to make a donation, make a donation to the trust fund. And you can put a little note on there, or follow it up with an email to me. All donations that I receive from members are confidential to me, and I will make certain I note it on my records so I could report to the club. We've had a few members, 6 members contribute to cards, and we've achieved so much.
Yeah, that's fine, Bob.
Yeah, personal thing.
Yeah, what I was thinking of doing was drawing up an electronic card to send around for everybody to sign, so that we can post on the website to everybody in Chard, in Rotary and in Chard, from every, from all the members of the club.
Yeah, sounds
Good
good.
idea. Yeah.
But see, I mean, that's nothing to do with cards in between members.
No.
Yep. Yeah. That's good, Robin. Yeah, good idea. Right. Peter, you're next on our list.
Just let members know we're not going to go ahead with the motorcycle and sidecar ride. Having got an email from our insurers, they would not cover us. They don't offer any cover whatsoever for anything involving motor vehicles. So as we would be entirely relying on the rider's own insurance, we thought we'd better not, we thought we'd give it a miss, that idea, just so it's not something just hanging in the air. It's not going to go ahead.
Right.
And I've got a £5 for Bob. I flogged some of those crocus corns that I had left over. So I flogged them for a £5, and so I'll patch that over to you, which has given me an idea for next year, by the way.
Thank you, Peter. David Keylock.
No, nothing. Thank you, Dave.
Right. Thank you, David. Robin, have you got any?
No, just, actually, Mike was gone, so I was going to say, just on the question of computers, I mean, as you know, Chris and I have done a lot of the work for the Red Cross, and we've been asked to take part in some telephone support work, and we've got to do some training. The only thing is the telephone support system they've got on, in order to do it, you have got to have a desktop or a laptop, because the systems they use don't work on iPads and pads.
Oh.
And I thought, they're struggling to find people to do this, and when you consider the number of people now who use pads rather than computers,
yeah,
why are they using a system that doesn't work on them?
Yeah. Right. Dick Arnold.
Thanks, President. Just a query. I've now got the Rotary diaries, which people ordered. I've also got my calendar inserts, which I normally give out, usually my birthday, but it'll be for Christmas now. I'm not sure about the logistics of getting them to people.
Who's that?
He's obviously on full power, Dick.
Yeah, are you in Switzerland?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
I'm cuckoo.
Well,
Anybody got any bright ideas?
I don't mind collecting them from you, Dick, and I'll be the postie. I'll deliver them to members on your behalf if you wish.
Would you? Oh, bless you. So if I let you have them all done up in envelopes,
yes,
you can deal with that.
Yes.
Okay.
How much are they, Dick?
Sorry.
How much are they?
How much are they, Dick? How much are the diaries?
How much do I need to give Peter?
£4.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
What I suggest, to save Bob a lot of trouble, if you let me have a check for £4, those who bought them, and I'll put them all together in one and push the money to you, Bob, when I've got the lot.
Well, who's going to deliver the diaries?
Peter.
Peter.
Why doesn't Peter collect the money?
Okay.
So that he's got the cash.
Yeah, if he's willing to.
And then he can backs it to me with his £5.
If you're willing to do that, Peter.
Yes, no problem. And
it seems simpler.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you.
And I'll deliver your calendar at the same time as well, Dick.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Peter, and thank you, Dick, for that as well. Right. Eric.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
Only that I had difficulty getting in tonight for some strange reason, and therefore missed the beginning of Mark's dissertation, which was my loss, but I don't quite know what happened.
Well, it doesn't need to be a loss, Tony, because we are recording this and it will be put, I will send it around to everybody anyway.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. Stanley?
Nothing more, thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Robert?
No more. Thank you very much. I made the announcement that I intended. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Robert. Yeah. And Michael?
Nothing to add.
Right. Thank you, Michael. Right. I think that leaves us with, just with the final toast. I don't think there's any other business, is there? That we're aware of?
No, we're off.
All right. Rotary around the world.
Rotary around the world.
Thank you.
Night all. Good night.
Stay safe.
Right.
Cheers,
Yeah, thanks for coming.